My name's Jacob Stock, Senior Planner with CRPA. I will give a short presentation here on cultivating community, conserving the basin. Then I'll leave. I'll be at Mott's playing video blackjack, and Paul Nielsen will be here, however, Chief Planning Officer, to answer any questions you may have. No? Okay. I'll stick around for questions too then at the end of the presentation. So I'm here to talk about the policy alternatives for cultivating community, conserving the basin. This is the current and last phase of the Tahoe Living Strategic Priority. It's aimed at adapting TRPA's policies and regulations to support workforce housing, to meet our region's housing needs, and to maintain and improve our environmental protections. So at the heart of this project is really this idea that housing our local workforce and environmental protection go hand in hand. We're also supporting key goals of the regional plan through this project, such as walkability, sustainable communities, and land use patterns that help us meet our air quality, water quality, and greenhouse gas goals. So if you want to feel old, I'll tell you that we've been working on this current phase of the project for nearly 2 years now. And you recommended moving forward with our policy proposal in January. Now we're working on an environmental impact statement, or EIS, for the project. And today I'll follow up on some key scoping comments that shaped our environmental impact statement and the project alternatives in the EIS. I'll be focusing on project alternatives today specifically. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little overview. I'm going to give an overview of the TRPA EIS process. I'll talk about the policy alternatives in the EIS. What are they? Why are they important? I think you'll find that policy alternatives are a really useful tool for understanding the potential impact and effectiveness of a big policy change like what we're proposing here with cultivating community. And I hope that understanding these alternatives will help you make a confident and informed decision when we bring these amendments to you next year. So just keeping you informed and about the alternatives, and I think they'll be a useful tool for you later. Next slide. Okay, so if you have it in front of you right now, it's a good time to crack open your copy of the Bi-State Compact. That's TRPA's Environmental Review Authority comes from Article 7 of that compact, so you can follow along there. So an EIS is TRPA's most rigorous level of environmental study. This environmental document that we're doing for this project, Cultivating Community, is a TRPA EIS only. You've reviewed other documents that are sometimes joint CEQA or joint NEPA documents, sometimes all three. But this one will just be a TRPA document following TRPA's rules for environmental analysis. As always, we begin our review with our thresholds. Those are the basis for our standards of significance. The EIS will identify potential environmental impacts, whether those impacts are significant, and it will seek to mitigate any impacts if there are any. One of the ways we do this is by comparing potential impacts of different policy alternatives to the existing condition or to each other. So we look at different ways to solve a policy problem, including not changing anything at all. And next slide, please. And so that's pretty much what a policy alternative is. Alternatives help us understand the impact of a proposed action relative to other solutions or non-solutions and relative to the existing condition on the ground. We always study a no project alternative, and this is important because the impact of doing nothing is not nothing. And there is an impact to that as well. And we need to understand that environmental impact of doing nothing in order to understand the impact of the project. So we're analyzing all of the alternatives that I'm going to share with you. We're analyzing all of those equally, but staff will make a recommendation as this comes forward for approval. And staff is also preparing a memo looking at each alternative and how each alternative affects the project objectives. And that's going to be separate from the EIS, but also a useful tool for you all as this comes forward for adoption. Next slide. Okay, so as promised, we'll be looking at a no project alternative that evaluates the impact of TRPA's existing policies without the changes proposed through cultivating community. So this means that we'll be looking at the environmental and housing cost impact of existing policy conditions, including the regional plan, the code of ordinances, and any amendments that have been made to those documents to date. So that includes the Tahoe Living Phase 2 amendments, since those are existing policies that were adopted by the board. As I mentioned earlier, TRPA's rules require a no project alternative in the EIS, but it's also important to note that during our public comment period, our public scoping period for the EIS, we received several public comments that highlighted the importance of studying a no project alternative. To study this alternative, we are looking at current commute patterns, among other things. So our current commute patterns include conditions where much of our workforce is housed outside the basin. It's roughly 50% of our workforce. And so those are current conditions, and that's the basis that we're looking at least for the traffic and air quality portion of this alternative. Next slide. So this next alternative we're calling Housing Forward. This alternative focuses on adapting TRPA policy to meet the regional housing need, primarily through incentives for new workforce housing. And so the policy recommendations in this alternative came out of the Cultivating Community public outreach process we've been doing over the last few years. You saw it in attachment A to the packet that you advanced in January. So this alternative is really studying those policies from attachment A that you directed us to study in the EIS. This prioritizes policy and code amendments to support a range of housing types, including affordable apartments, townhomes, duplexes, fourplexes, and accessory dwelling units. And this alternative attempts to accomplish this through changes to the development review process, to our fees, development rights, coverage requirements, and use definitions, all within the population and growth projections of the 2012 EIS. And that's really important because we're really trying to direct that remaining growth from the 2012 regional plan towards smaller, more affordable housing in this alternative. Next slide. So the last alternative I'll summarize focuses on utilizing existing housing stock to meet Tahoe's housing needs. We call this the housing preservation alternative. This alternative evaluates meeting the housing need by trying to unlock underutilized homes or vacant housing stock through local programs like lease to locals, for example, down payment assistance, or heightened restrictions on short-term rentals. We chose to study this alternative in part because several public comments requested that we focus on utilizing existing housing in this project or exclude incentives for new workforce housing. So that's how we came to this alternative through a lot of input that we got from the public. Next slide. Now that I've summarized the three policy alternatives, what's next? The EIS review draft and proposed amendments to the regional plan and code of ordinances will be out for review in fall 2026, so fall of this year. We'll have a minimum 60-day public review period of those documents and take what we hear from the public and use that to draft our final EIS and proposed amendments for the project. And we hope that you'll consider those amendments in spring of 2027. So next year is when we plan to bring this forward to you all for consideration.